Okay, that's our intro. I didn't really have much of an intro for this one, but thanks everybody for joining us live. We are starting a new chat. Oh, I got my chat in the background somewhere. We're starting a new chat here, or at least having an introduction to potentially a new chat, talking about gun shops, talking with Toby from Cape Gunworks in Massachusetts. And I'm not totally sure what this is going to be. This might be a series, ideally, but today for sure it's going to be just a chat for about an hour about gun shops with a gun shop owner, someone who's familiar with how to chat online and the internet and discussing 2A topics and gun topics, and unfortunately dealing with all kinds of pretty heinous laws and stuff. So Toby, thanks for joining us. Gun topics and
yeah. My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
So we kind of stopped mid-sentence as we were talking before the show, just because the time came up to start the show here live. And we're kind of doing this unscheduled, spur of the moment. You're about to head out on some personal stuff, so I appreciate you taking the time. We were chatting just off air about the shop, though, and I asked if it's okay to ask a couple of questions about it. I'm ultimately fascinated, interested in gun shops, so I appreciate the opportunity to talk to somebody who's willing and able to talk about their shop.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to do it. I think it could make for a very interesting series if you do it from, all different angles, all different shops, all different locations. And it's something that I've owned, one for about 8 years now. And so it's my second career. And I just wanted to, it was something I've always been interested in doing, but we didn't do it until my business partner and I did a trip out to Front Sight. And
well, let's not assume nothing, and let's because we did chat maybe a month ago,
right.
And I asked you a bunch of questions about this kind of stuff. Let's not assume everybody's heard that chat from my end or listened to your show from your end, but you do a radio show each week. But maybe just an elevator speech. What's the story of Cape Gunworks?
Yeah. So we opened 8 years ago. We did kind of a two-pronged approach. One was just get the store open, get customers built, and start to give people the vibe of what we're going to be like as a gun store. And it was really to make up for our shortfalls of our knowledge in the industry and our connections in the industry, which were very nil, with excellent customer service and excellent, positive attitude from our employees and from ourselves, and really try to just fill the gap of where the need was, and go the extra mile and try to help people find what it is that they really are looking for. Not just to sell them something, but try to develop a long-term relationship with people so that we could continually fulfill their needs, and start to get to know them, what they like, what they want, what they need. And so that's what we did. And then once we had enough of a customer base to get the financing for the big building, that's basically what we did.
Appreciate that. So to kind of start with that kind of story of the shop, then you started off, from what I remember, as sort of a corner of your other business. You've had more than one business. So this was a second or a part-time or a kind of introduction, like you said, and then it grew to its own building, if I remember right. And then you moved again to the building with the range and everything that we'll talk about in a minute.
Yeah, we always had the intention to do this, what we have now, which is a range, a big training classroom type of facility, and then the pro shop where we can outfit everybody. So that was always the main goal. But I couldn't convince a bank that it was a good idea at the time without having sold a single product. So we decided to do the two-pronged approach at that point.
Okay, well, I think you kind of answered where I was going then. I was going to ask, you mentioned, well, in your words, being a novice, I guess, to the industry, but I think somebody who's been around the gun shops and the gun industry and just business in America knows where gun shops fit into that and knows how businesses work and stuff. But I mean, having actual, time on the clock, I can see where you say coming into it without like maybe, you know, having your parents owned a gun shop or something like that, or you grew up working at a gun shop or something. But the strategy of going from small to medium to larger, let's say, or, you know, on your way to getting even bigger, is that like just an overall strategy for business that you thought was sound, or was that a strategy specifically for a gun shop that was the way to take a gun shop in Massachusetts at the time?
I think it's a good question, and I'm not sure I'm trying to remember my mindset back then. It was to do we wanted to make a splash and be a big deal, but not in a arrogant way. It was more of in a service to our customer base way. We wanted to be the one-stop shop. Really, I've still never written our mission statement down on a plaque and posted it everywhere, but it really came down to we wanted to be the destination that you would go to if you wanted to shoot a gun, buy a gun, learn about shooting guns, whether it be defensively or just for safety. Kind of that one-stop shop, almost like the original Cabela's mentality back in the day when they first started cropping up. They would show up in a city, and then the city would build up around them. You know what I mean? So we kind of wanted to be more of a destination, like a place where people would go, man, if we're even within 2 hours of that place, you've got to drive to Cape Gunworks. Like that was always the goal. Not just, again, for our own egos, but more just because we think that the industry really needed it. I do believe that, you know, there was a lot of gun owners giving gun owners a bad name. And I hate to say it, but some of it was other gun shops. So my buddy coined a phrase a long time ago, the gun owners against gun owners. And one of these days I'll do a little skit on it, but it has a big ring of truth to it, and to a certain extent. And we really wanted to say gun stores should not get a pass at bad customer service because they're a high barrier to entry, because there's so many hoops to jump through just to get a gun store open. We should be treated the same as a good restaurant in town, or any other type of business that will stand or it'll fall on the merits of good customer service, good product selection, good cleanliness, good modern facility, you know. And I think we really wanted to try to push the firearms industry into the next, you know, phase, if you will, like get out of the dusty cobwebs and stained carpet and, you know, fallen out drop ceilings, and get into a nice, bright, well-lit, modern facility with clean facilities, clean restrooms, be welcoming to everybody, and really nail it on good customer service. And because we felt that if we could do that, we can make up for some of our deficiencies. Like, I'm no fool. I don't claim to know everything about guns. I know that my customer base is probably more sophisticated than I am when it comes to the nuance of whatever it is that they're into. Like, we've even talked about your, you know, Saturday night special collection. Like, I would never in a million years jump into that conversation and be like, oh, this is the best one, or that's this, or this one, you know what they did with this one. I'd be, you know, that conversation would end pretty quick. And the same is true with like a lot of the products we sell. So I'm more of a sponge to people. Like, I'll be like, hey, how's it going? Great to see you again. Like, what are you in for? Oh, you like those? Those are cool. Yeah, tell me about the one you like. And, you know, we'll pick it up and we'll learn about it together a little bit. There's definitely certain things I consider myself an expert on, but I'm not kidding myself. I'm never going to know everything there is to know about this industry. And so really, I just want to be the person that stands in the gap and fills the need for the firearms industry in a way that isn't like demoralizing or condescending or making people feel stupid. You know, that's really one of the biggest feedbacks we get on a weekly basis is, man, I was so nervous going into your store, and I just got to tell you, your staff is amazing. They made me feel so at ease. Like I was asking questions. They didn't make me feel dumb. And, that really is what the mission and the goal of what we did and what we do is really, because if you don't do that, how are we going to expand the Second Amendment to people who may or may not normally, walk into a gun store? So, that's really all it is. Winning hearts and minds of people, a little by little. That's really all it comes down to.
Right on. It sounds like then I appreciate the mission and the goal kind of separately there. Sounds like then you're trying to build a shop that you wanted to exist rather than one that the market could afford or that fit in between the other shops of size or that was between two Walmarts or whatever the other business decision.
Yeah, exactly. That's really what it came down to, is build the shop. And I do think there's a lot of great shops out there that do it and they nail it. And we even look to them for, ideas, and plagiarism's the highest form of flattery, right? So I'll say, oh, wow, that's amazing. I can't believe they do that. That's awesome. Let's do it. It's kind of like the Krav Maga approach of gun stores, like where we're, if there's a better way of doing it, we want to do it. It's not.
And do what works, not just what looks fancy or that's
Right.
traditional. Like that's the thing about Krav Maga, from what I understand, the martial art is that, it's not like traditional or formal or, we're doing something because there's some legacy to it. It's more like if this gets the person to leave you alone, then we're going to try that.
Yeah. And they're not afraid to adapt and evolve. If there's a better way of doing it that surfaces later, they're like, yep, we're doing this now. Like, that's okay. And I'm the same way. If we ever get to the point where we're like, this is the way we do it, and that's it, like we might as well, go out to pasture, because I believe that we can continually uh, polish the rock, if you will, and get it to a good luster, but then you got to maintain it, and then you got to make sure that it, doesn't collect dust. So um, that's really what the approach is at this point, um, for us, and hopefully we'll set some sort of a standard that other people will try to achieve to, because I believe that'll help the whole industry. If, kind of like the rising tide floats all boats theory, if a shop comes in and does a really good job, and if someone moved up the road from me and started to do better than we do, which is entirely possible, I'm not saying it couldn't happen, and if they did, like I'd be like, good on them, man. They figured out how to do this. I'm not afraid of competition. I think that competition is good for whatever business it's in. And I think the old approach was, oh man, I hope no one crops up around me, and when someone else goes out of business, I'm applauding. Like, that's not going to help our industry at all. We want gun stores everywhere. We want it to be common. We want it to be ordinary. We want it to be like, oh man, I got to drive 45 minutes to go to my favorite gun store. Well, wouldn't it be cool if there was one, 15 minutes away, and there was enough people supporting all those shops? That would be huge. And um, it's not just, uh, one every, you know, 200 miles or something like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of something that's like the opposite, but I think of gun shops like restaurants. You can have more than one restaurant nearby each other because a pizza place and a burrito place are different restaurants, and different
Right.
people are going to go there for different reasons. And you can go to both. A customer can be a customer of both, so they can both, actually want both, right? So I kind of think of gun shops that way. A good, healthy town. That's a good, interesting question. I'm going to ask that in a minute. But I was going to Well, no, I was just going to interrupt there and say it's like restaurants. I don't know if I'm assuming you agree with that, but I don't know what the opposite would be. It's not like, I'm trying to think of something that's very territorial, that it wouldn't be near each other, but I think it's the gun shops are kind of the opposite of that. Now, maybe the big box stores are kind of territorial. Too many big box shops might saturate an area.
Right. Yeah. I've always had the phrase, I don't know where I heard it, but somebody said, local waters will support local fishermen. And, you know, a lot of local fishermen will kind of crop up, but when the big draggers come in and kind of drag everything off the bottom and they get all the fish, all the, you know, sea life, and they kill a lot, then it's hard for that water to support the local fishermen because you got 20 big draggers out there. But if the, you know, local community is supporting us, it's pretty funny how sometimes people come in and they're like, hey, I would only ever shop here. And I'm like, well, I really appreciate that loyalty, but, you know, don't feel like that, you know, you have to be brand loyal to me. If somebody up the road has a gun for sale that's cheaper or better, or, you know, their service is good or they have a special going and you go buy it, like, I'm okay with that. Like, I understand that there's other choices out there. The thing that I find the most humbling is when someone does choose to come to my shop and spend $1 in my shop. I'm honored. I'm like, wow, because I know there's choices. There's the internet, there's, you know, gun stores all around, there's other people that do things very good. And if they ultimately choose to come into my shop, and like I said, part of the mission statement was I want to be that shop that people would drive to and people would say, like, why would you go anywhere else? But if they do, I'm okay with it. Every day people come in with like a hat or a shirt from another gun store in town or whatever, or in our area. And I kind of get a chuckle out of it. I'm like, that's cool, man. They're like supporting everybody, you know, and I'm okay with that. And I do believe that our industry will be served better once the gun stores collaborate a little bit, you know, and start to help each other out a little bit more, kind of that rising tide mentality, you know. And I'm happy to try to do something in that space. I just, you know, I've talked about it a couple times and it's been, you know, in our area, it's been met with kind of mixed results. But I do think that, you know, some of the best ideas we get come from collaborations with other gun stores. And
Well, I'm working on that myself, so we'll chat more about that, I'm sure.
yeah.
But I think maybe the one way strategy to do it is just get people from different areas so that they don't feel like
Right.
it's a neighbor. They feel, you know, they could feel more at ease. But yeah, I think that you're right. Rising tide is a great way to say it.
Mhm.
Okay, so I wanted to take a break and say thanks. We are doing this live, so we're maybe 20 minutes into about an hour. I didn't want to take too much of Toby's time, and he's got other things going on, so we're going to keep it about an hour. But we are doing this live. I like to do things live. I enjoy the interactive nature of the internet. So I just want to say thanks to the people showing up live. If you're listening to this in the future, uh, eventually, if this turns into a chat, it'll have a scheduled time. But for now, we just ran it live. So I'm letting the people that are watching live know I'm starring. I'm putting a little note to their questions, and we'll hit those towards the end. But I had a couple of questions. Really wanted to talk about gun shop specifically. So Toby had mentioned the growth of the shop and you know, the story of the shop. You mentioned the goal and the mission of the shop, and not necessarily when is the next step, but what would the next steps look like? Is there a grander goal for Cape Gunworks?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's something we work on weekly. Originally, our business plan was to have probably 3 to 5 locations in the Northeast. We've probably changed that a little bit, and we've refined it down to probably 2 or 3 locations total in the Northeast, with a big in between the phase we're in right now be the website. So our web space is really the area for the most growth right now, without having to reinvest. Like what it takes to do what we did here at the time when real estate was a whole lot more affordable than it is now, you know, is multiple millions of dollars. And um, so we feel that we could fund location number 2 or location number 3 by expanding the web sales. And that has been our goal as of the last year and a half, 2 years. And so it has started to take root. We went from zero website 2 years ago. We had a website, but you could literally like only book a class on it. That was about it. And now we have pretty much all of our product on our website. And we went from a year ago, I think 2 or 3% of total sales were done on the web. And now we just hit 13%. So in 2 years, we went from 0 to 13% of our sales is on the website now, which is huge. Most people that have a brick and mortar store like us never really get over the 15% mark. And we're looking to get to, by year end, by up to 20%. So that's our goal. And it's going to be tough because I think there's a lot of flaws in our website, but if we can out muscle it and do it, the same way we did this, which was roll up the sleeves and just kind of work it through, we should be able to get there. And then when it's bringing in enough money to merit a total revamp of the web, we'll do that. So, but yeah, it's been a quite the climb, if you will. And then we'll start looking at location number 2, because that would be fun to do. We definitely have at least one other location in us as a goal.
I mean, I imagine just all businesses at scale, you start to have a second one cost something, but then you can have inventory and the resources that gives you expand, right? What your abilities are, and you can move inventory back and forth. I imagine same thing with even 4, and then you get to buy things at a much different scale, right, or something. So it starts to get into a whole different set of the rules. But you do things like the food truck,
mm-hmm.
that fits into it. And is that, want to talk about that at all?
Sure. The food truck is my wild, harebrained idea that.
Well, let me ask you, I don't know if I've asked you this. Is this something that you saw someone else, another shop doing, or you thought
no.
do it? Okay.
No, it was, I'm just wondering if I'm going to get myself in trouble by saying all this, but it's not. I don't really care even if I do, but basically it was the proving grounds of, we have a business next to us that is a restaurant, and we really wanted the real estate. But to buy a parking lot for the amount of money that guy was asking for the building was really stupid. Like, we need parking, but it was almost what we paid for our entire building.
You're not talking like share a wall neighbor. You mean the next property over, freestanding building and
correct,
its own parking area. Okay.
Yep. And they've been a restaurant forever. The guy's kind of getting tired. He wants to retire. And so we've talked to him several times about what it would take to buy the place. And in my opinion, he wanted like $500,000 more than it's worth. So that's a tough nut to crack. And so I was like, well, in high school, I wrote a business plan for a coffee shop. And I've always wanted to do a coffee shop. It was my small business management senior project. And I thought it would be a really good idea at the time. And this is back in 92, 93, when Starbucks and Pete's Coffee and
I had worked at a Starbucks inside of Barnes and Noble, turning 10-cent, and I'm not even kidding, 10, 20-cent donuts or whatever we would buy, the fancy donuts, and water into $20 bills all day long. And I thought, the internet, I just worked at AOL. Wait, I think I just worked at AOL and I was getting sick. Wait, I can't remember if I was just about to work at AOL. I think I left there and worked at AOL. But yeah, I was thinking the same thing in the early 2000s. You can turn water and flour and sugar into money, and the internet's just there to entertain everybody. Internet cafe.
And so I really wanted to do it. And then my family kind of started getting a thing for really good donuts, like these hand cut donuts. And we wanted to, that is a really old picture. That is hysterical. that's not what my building looks like anymore, but anyway, these hand cut donuts and coffee, and that's what we were thinking about. So rather than just this huge capital investment and try to do a donut shop and try to do all this stuff and like fail, we're like, why don't we do the proving ground and buy a truck, and we'll do it through that. But the problem is very similar to our entry into the retail. Brendan and I, neither one of us had any retail experience when we opened Cape Gunworks. I come from construction, he comes from finance and tech. And so we really had to figure it out as we went. And here we are again with a food truck. Like, neither one of us are foodies. So we had to figure it out, and we're figuring it out. And it hasn't even officially launched yet. We've never charged $1 for a cup of coffee yet. We've just given it away, like for this weekend, for tax-free weekend. We're giving away breakfast sandwiches and coffee and whatnot. So we're really trying to get it launched here. But we've missed the whole summer, which is really stupid in our area to miss the summer, but it'll work eventually. It's just going to take some more muscle to get it through.
So in other words, it gets, I don't know what it's like weather-wise in Massachusetts in the winter. It's not, nobody's gonna want to stand outside and get a food truck, or?
I think they will if we can do it right. Like, in other words, if we got some breakfast sandwiches, we got some, really good donuts, we got our coffee ready. Maybe you can order it on the app and be ready to pick it up, just pull in, jump out, grab it and go. That I think will work fine, because our road has a huge amount of people driving it every morning on the way to work, going to the lumberyard, going to the supply house or whatever, going to pick up stuff before they get going. So I think it could really work. We're mobile, so we can go wherever, we could drive up the road where there's 100 businesses, like in the industrial park, and just say, ring the bell like the ice cream man almost, and say, hey, here you are, what do you want? And as long as we can efficiently get people what they want, or they could order it on the app, then I think we'll be able to really make it fly. So that's really what the goal was,
And then, well, I guess I was thinking you could pull it into one of the bays or something and just have people go over to it inside the building. If I don't know what the inside of the building's like, but assuming you had something where people could get into the docks, or are those the kind of docks where a truck backs up to them?
Yeah, they're a loading dock. If we ended up just keeping the food truck and not doing the
buying the whole restaurant,
another brick and mortar location, I would probably just excavate a spot on the side of the building where all the dumpsters are right now, lower the area so the truck could just kind of sit there, and we'll move the dumpsters further away from the buildings. And it'd look a lot better, number one. Then the truck has its own like resting ground. We're not taking up parking spots, and it could just sit there, if it turns into a thing like it could, we're hoping it turns into a thing. So
yeah, I'm a big fan. I mean, I'm asking because I'm not going to say it's a trend, but there's definitely a lot of gun shops that I pay attention to, either because I visited them and I started to follow them, or someone recommended that they went to and it was a cool shop. People know I really like shops. And I've seen a bunch of them that have either a really tight affiliation with a couple of food trucks, where they do it on the regular, or like you're doing, have their own cafe or truck or both. And I think that's just an appropriate and awesome evolution of shops. Shops being essentially the infrastructure of our community, of our industry, and of our culture. We got gun shows. People, for one, we let them go. And the anti started to persecute them and marginalize gun shows. And we let them because no one went to gun shows. And then with shortages and scarcities, gun shows turned into excuses to get your ammo without paying for shipping. So gun shows are gone. And nobody learned a lesson of sacrificing our gun shows through apathy. And gun shops are, well, they have to exist for one, because of laws, but they're at that same risk. So one of my goals, or my focuses for the show, at least, and from what a lot of the stuff I do, is to remind people that shops, there's no obligation to be a shop. It's certainly not easy. There's no money. It's really difficult to make money. People typically do it with a passion. And right now there's a war on gun shops. So
Right.
the shops that are doing stuff like getting people in with creative ways, having fun, and keeping the culture and the community out there are awesome. So you've mentioned that your food truck kind of looks like a SWAT van, and you ain't kidding. This is a cool looking food truck.
Yeah.
So is there going to be more Cape Gunworks branding, or at least is this magnetic enough that you could put a big magnet on it or something when applicable?
We talked about that, but then we're like, if we want to get into the Barnstable County Fair, if we want to go to, the local craft fair up the road, if we want to go to the school
Yeah. Oh, this
bazaar.
is perfect. But you know what I'm just thinking? As soon as I said magnet, it would work even better. Just
Yeah.
banners, just some banners that you can flop down the side when you want to. If you want to pull it up to a gun event, boom, now it's
Right.
the Cape Gunworks van. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a great one. So what was the story on this? Why this one? Or did this one come to you, or did you go out and seek it? How'd you get this? Or am I allowed to ask you?
Honestly, as cool as it looks, it was a mistake. It was how you make a mistake that you spend this much money on is we hired a guy right out of the gate who was going to be our chef with the food truck. I kind of pitched the vision to him, and he called me like 2 days later and said, "I haven't slept for 2 days. This is going to be amazing. I want in. I want to do it. I'm your guy." He gave us his resume. He showed us his food product and all this stuff. And we're like, awesome. This is what we needed. Someone to kind of take it by the horns and go. And so he was going around looking at all these food trucks for sale, and he found this one, and he's like, "This is the one to buy, guys. Get the financing in order." And I'm like, okay, great. And so then we went up and picked it up, and I'm like looking at it going, oh shoot, are you sure this is going to work? He's like, yep, no problem, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And then I get it back, and then all of a sudden he just fell off the face of the earth, like gone. Never heard from him again. Like email him, text him, like what the heck? Gone. And so we're like, great. Now we're stuck with a food truck, no one to run it. And then come to find out, welcome to the food industry. This is how it happens. Like my friend owns a restaurant, and he's laughing at me. He's like, yeah, I told you not to open a food truck. He's like, you got one of the nicest businesses I've ever seen. And he's like, and why do you want to get into the restaurant business? And I'm like, because I'm an idiot. And he's like, yeah, that's right. Say that to yourself, And I'm like, I know it's hard. I know it's a challenge, but so is guns. Like if it was easy, everyone would do it.
Yeah, no, seriously. Where'd you come up with that? Where did I hear that? Like I say that all the time.
Well,
yeah, probably most of the time. Like if this was simple, everybody'd be doing it. Every time somebody's like, "Oh, this wasn't easy." Yeah,
right.
Shit.
What's worth doing in life that comes easy? Like besides like sleep and breathing, like that's okay. That's obvious. I'm talking about worthwhile endeavors beyond the basic human need. Frankly, anything, whether it's raising a family, getting married, running a business, painting beautiful art, all that stuff, it takes time, it takes technique, it takes hard work, and it takes passion. And so, frankly, I get it. Like, I'm not afraid of any of that. So let's just do it. And Brendan is a good, business partner because he's more the calculated risk management guy, and I'm more the jump out the plane and be like, hey, did we bring parachutes? And so the two of us work well together for that reason. And I was somehow able to convince him it was a good idea to do a food truck, much to his chagrin at first and probably now. But we call it the longest taxiway ever. So we've had the truck for a year, but it took a year to get permits, licensing, get the truck outfitted properly, get a bunch of other equipment, get a commissary with our neighbor, and blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot that goes into it. And now we're just starting to do a soft opening. So.
Right on. Well, is there something, I mean, I'm guessing there must be something, but is there like a guy, like the Idiot's Guide to getting a restaurant going in Massachusetts, or it's just everybody for themselves? So you have to, it's not like somebody was going to hold your hand and do it for you no matter what, right? It was always going to be some challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of good information out there on the interwebs that has, you know, what to do, what not to do. We've probably made a couple of big mistakes already, but that's all right. We're gonna push it through and persevere, and that's the way it works. You know, it was funny because in the original business plan, we had a cafe in our shop,
Okay.
and the first location I'll tell you a funny story if you want to hear a funny story about this.
Sure.
The original location we had kind of looked at to buy was this huge building over across town.
Now, this is when you're going from a corner of the original other business, or when you're going to the first separate location, or going from that first small location to the big location?
Yeah, this was going to be making the jump from the small location to the big location where we
where
were going to do the range and all that. So we had to like find a building. And this building I was already aware of, but I didn't know it was for sale. And I didn't know the owner wanted to sell it. So we didn't really make a hard run at it, even though I kind of knew it was there all along because my kids used to come here. We used to play paintball and my kids would come to the skate park and all that. But there was this other building across town that was a lumber yard and it closed. And so had a for sale sign. I'm like, nice. And I started talking to the owner and he wanted a ton of money for it. But the beauty of it was the parking is humongous. It was a huge parking lot. We could do outdoor events. And they also, because it was a lumber yard, they had a drive-through lumber yard area that was connected to the building that was 330 feet long. So I'm thinking, hey, indoor 100-yard range. This will be awesome. Like, we're going to do this. And so the building had a lot of challenges and problems. And so we were looking at collaborating with other companies. I was trying to get an investor to come in and do kind of a family entertainment business in there, like a bowling alley or something else. And we were talking to people about a cafe. And I was like, this cafe needs to stand alone. It can't just be tied to our gun store. I want people to like want to go to this cafe, like if they're going out for a date or want to go for a drink or something with their friends, and just a great epic place, like where you could have the bowling alley, we even talked about a gym facility attached to it. We were throwing out all kinds of ideas. And but it was really important to partner with a destination type of restaurant. At the time, we didn't have a real good burger joint on the Cape. Five Guys just moved in the last few years. And I know the jury's out as to whether you consider it a good burger joint, but I meant something not like McDonald's, Wendy's, Burger King, something a little bit of a step up where you could get a good burger. And so that's what I was thinking. The friend that took Brendan and I out to Las Vegas for the Mr. Olympia competition, when we formed the idea for Cape Gunworks, because we went to Front Sight, was the former bodyguard for the New Kids on the Block, the band. So he used to do security for the band as they toured and whatnot. And so I'm like, well, hey, how about this? This is a crazy idea. How about you pitch to Mark Wahlberg opening a Wahlburger in Cape Gunworks? And I'm like, Wahlburgers would be perfect. It's a high-end burger joint that people would go to just because of the destination of it, because it's Wahlburgers, right? And so he's like, that's a great idea. And I got to talk to him anyway. So let me talk to him. So he talks to him, pitches the idea to him. He actually was pretty open to the idea. At the time, there was a thing going in Plymouth called Plymouth Rock Studios. And it was going to be Hollywood East. We had really good tax incentives for people to make movies. That's when, like, you know, they were making a bunch of movies, like movies in Boston. There was a whole bunch of them, one right after another, because of this tax incentives and whatnot. So they decided to build a major movie studio out here called Plymouth Rock. And so I said, look, we could maybe become the training facility, the liaison to Plymouth Rock Studios whenever they need people trained and all that stuff. Were you going to say something?
No, that's a great idea. Yeah, like
Yeah.
kind of like Aaron is out in California.
Exactly. What Taryn, and he wasn't even doing that at the time. I was like thinking this would be awesome, or maybe he was, but I wasn't
Well,
following.
no, ever since the Fall Guy, we all know that there needs to be the infrastructure of Hollywood, right?
Right. Yeah. So that was kind of the idea. And I'm like, what better way to bridge that gap than have Mark Wahlberg be the guy who makes all the introductions? So my mind is, I'm already seeing it. I'm already eating the burgers, sitting in our lounge, watching the people come in and shoot their guns. You know what I mean? So he decides he likes the idea. He was looking for another location to put a Wahlburgers, but he was thinking on Nantucket because that's where the much higher end clientele was. But he's like, I'm open to doing one in Hyannis. You got the airport there, and people coming and going. And so he and this is our first location that we had kind of earmarked for Cape Comoros. We still had to figure out the financials of it, and so he gets on a call with this other guy again, and they're talking it through. We gave him our business plan, and he was going to download us on how the call went later, and then he would make the introduction to us so that we could sell it to him or pitch it to him, kind of finalize it if he's still interested after this second go around with him. So they're talking, and he jumps on his computer and goes, all right, so what's the address? So he gives him the address to this location, and he's on the horn with him, and he goes, hey, he goes, what's across the street from this location? And and I apologize for my English here, but or my French. And my buddy goes, oh, and he goes, yeah, that's right. He goes, it's a shit factory because we have our because we have our it's our sewage treatment plant across the street from this location. And he goes, yeah, that's not going to work. You don't put a Wahlburgers across the street from a shit factory. And so my friend goes, oh man, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't think about that. He goes, that's right, you don't think. He goes, that's why you're poor and I'm rich. And then he proceeds to like chew my buddy up and spit him out for the next 45 minutes. And so when I called him afterwards, I'm like, how'd it go? How'd it go? He's like,
Oh man,
dude, he's like, it's DOA. This project is DOA. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he goes, Toby, he Googled the location and it didn't even occur to me, and I'm like, oh, yeah. And then I remember like driving by in the summertime and the smell from this place is awful. So like, that's good for us too. Like we're not putting our building there.
yeah, I was gonna say like that. What made you realize too? Like, yeah, there's no way
Right.
I'm gonna go here. Yeah.
Right. And so then I said, well, tell him about this. And he's like, no, I'm never doing that again. Never making that introduction again for anybody. And I'm like, all right, fair enough. So we kind of put off to the side the idea of having a cafe inside, especially when we bought this building, we didn't have the space and everything else. So, but
Okay, so it was more of a space thing because there are quite a few of the shops that are the newer built ones that are huge that will incorporate, like I was saying, some sort of a cafe or a place for a cafe. Sometimes just having a place like a large get-together room with like, I don't know what you call that. Like I would have called it a hat check room back in the day, but sort of like a room without a door with a little half counter, and that allows somebody to set up donuts and coffee or whatever for a class or for like Tony Simon does the diversity shoots where people just show up and do familiarizations and stuff. It gives them a place to, set up some kind of pizzas or something like that.
Yeah. So now we're back at it with the food truck, and we'll see if it does service the fit a need, and we really hope that it's also another outlet. We sell blackout coffee in our shop, and we brew it and give it away. But we want to kind of expand that as an offering to people who will buy it and try it and like it and want to buy it and take it home. So.
And that's a Massachusetts company, or they're from like one of the Carolinas or something?
One of the owners is from Massachusetts. It's Jared Yanis from Guns and Gadgets is one of the owners of that, and but they basically are located in Florida.
It's Florida.
Yeah, they roast their beans and everything down in Florida.
But a pro with 2A, so portion of the funds goes to efforts?
Yeah, so they have and we sell, like, the ones we stock a lot are the FPC blend and the GOA blend and there's even a Guns and Gadgets blend that, he gives a percentage to for Second Amendment causes. So, but yeah, they are a Pro 2A coffee roaster. And so that's why we partnered with them. We used to sell Black Rifle, and I like Black Rifle. I actually just went to the Nine Line Apparel shop down in Georgia on my drive back from Florida last spring when I went down there to get my father-in-law's truck, and we stopped there, and they had a food truck out front, and it was pretty cool. And then the Black Rifle Coffee barista, they did a good job there. They had the whole bar going and a couple of baristas there doing it. Like, it was almost like a modern Starbucks, type feel, but it was all Black Rifle and all their coffee and everything. So it was good. And we want to do a similar version of that. So, yeah.
Well, one of the things I like about coffee is that it's like, it's hitting the sensories, the more of the senses. When you walk in, you get the scent, obviously, and then that's going to get people just thinking about the coffee and the element. And then because they're focused on 2A as opposed to other things or just nothing, just Starbucks, which is just a brand. But that's cool that it keeps, again, somebody who might just come in, have no concept of all of the focus on what the Second Amendment protects or the fights, other than superficial, and they look at the bag of coffee and they see FPC and they start to question, it's awesome. And then people that just want to support it know that they can purchase it at the shop, I guess, instead of having to order it online.
Yeah. I used to say that I don't remember how I said it, but it was something to the effect that the Second Amendment battle can be won or lost over coffee. As silly as that sounds, but because for some reason, like Starbucks coffee, I absolutely love their coffee. And I hate the company because of the stance they've made in the past to be anti-gun, anti-2A, and they ended up becoming very woke. And then Pete's Coffee, another company I really like, they were anti-Second Amendment at one point. And really, after these major events would happen or whatever, like a shooting or
like a misguided virtue signal, not because they got any skin in the game, just because they decide this is a great way to score some political points and they don't
right.
care about gun owners, I guess.
Yeah. And so I used to say, like, you could make or break the Second Amendment just based on the coffee you drink. You know what I mean? Like, and my friends all used to make fun of me because I drink coffee, Starbucks, and they're like, dude, they're more against the Second Amendment than anything else out there. And I'm like, I know, but I love their coffee. I wish they'd just shut up and make coffee. And like the old book Laura Ingraham wrote, just shut up and sing. Like, I go to your show to hear you sing. I don't want to hear your political views, even if they align with me, just unless you're going to like a Ted Nugent concert or something, because you know what he's going to bring. But you're not going there to, you're going there for both, right? But for the most people that are just mainstream musicians, you're not really going there to get indoctrinated one way or the other. You just want to hear them sing. Same thing with the coffee. I just want to go buy your good coffee. I think you're doing a lot of things right, and I'll just go in there and support your cause. But anyway, so that's where I'm at now.
And there's a lot of people that drink coffee, and again, at least in our era, it's been a very consistent element of people's lives, coffee cups and all the whole thing around it. So I'm glad to see that there are Second Amendment focused one, not just gun focused one. Now, I'm not going to, I like the idea of some of the veteran and awareness, in support of veterans, families and stuff. I'm digging all that too, but definitely compared to the Starbucks and stuff. I kind of went on a sidetrack when I was asking about the future of Cape Gun Works and can I bring up the delivery, or do you want to keep talking about that? I know it was kind of maybe a slip even.
No, that's fine, because I outed myself. So that's definitely something we are really trying to come up with the logistics of it. But we have another little vehicle that has a full Cape Gun Works wrap on it. It's a Honda Pilot, so it's not the most tactical looking vehicle out there, but I mean, it's wrapped head to toe with Cape Gunworks, so it looks kind of cool. And it's big enough that we can fit quite a bit of stuff in there and still drive it around. And we're not in the big like box truck yet. But in the meantime, we want to launch a delivery service to people who, it's probably a better business idea to get them to drive to us, because then we have so much more product we can offer them than whatever. But there's this huge, like I said before, about filling the gap. Yeah, there it is.
This guy.
Yep, filling the gap of the needs, right? So we're in a state where it's technically illegal to ship ammo to. There's still some companies that'll do it, but our Attorney General wrote a bunch of companies and said cease and desist. The law is in Massachusetts that you have to have a ammunition license, a license to sell ammunition, and the FID card or the license to carry needs to be presented in hand at the time of sale. So for that reason, you really can't ship. Again, we weren't going to take the risk and ship to companies, to people in this state and have that backfire and be our undoing and get us non-renewed for our licenses. So we're like, we'll just launch a delivery service and we'll hit the road with a truck full of ammo, and we'll come to you and we'll pick out the days we're going to be in your area or the day we're going to be in your area. And if you don't mind waiting a week, we'll get to you, And so
a lot of time ammo is shipped all slow anyway, right? So it takes forever anyway.
Right. Yeah. In fact, you might end up getting it quicker if you have us ship it, deliver to you. So we're all ready to launch this. This is happening, and we're just kind of working out the ergonomics of it. And then what we'll do is we'll hopefully even expand to other states. Right now, we're going to solely focus on Massachusetts, but we use the regular delivery services of FedEx Ground or whatever for anyone in out of state that orders ammo from us. But ultimately, it would be nice to have maybe a fleet of vehicles servicing New England. We could drive all over New England. And it gets back to, especially when we're into that multiple location, like you were talking about, where we could have a centralized warehouse and a shipping hub that we can feed the other 2 or 3 locations from and hit the road with our, ammo shipments or our
accessories and supplies, right?
Yeah.
Cleaning supplies, whatever they might need.
Right. Everything but guns. So, and maybe even we could do gun deliveries if we delivered to the FFL near you, like instead of them getting it from FedEx, we'll get it from Cape Gunworks, and we'll just roll up on the gun store and jump out and say, here's the gun for transfer to Joe, and here's his number, all his contact information, and we'll see. I don't know how that'd be received, but maybe at some point it'll be so much of a service that they're like, oh, well, I'm glad you stopped in because here's 2 guns heading down to your shop. You know what I mean? Or can you drop these at these shops on your way back to the Cape? That's really what the goal is in the game plan. So we might actually fill a couple of needs, especially when you look at how UPS is getting weird about guns, and eventually maybe we'll fill that gap in our whole area as well.
And it doesn't need that you've got to replace or take away it, but if it can supplement your ability to do the other things, then that's awesome that you're creating something that at least has the something that can you can figure you can decide once it's built instead of just not having anything.
Right.
The last question, and then we're coming up on the hour, and I could tell by the puppy there that we're getting up to an hour there. Somebody wants to go outside or something. I shouldn't say that out loud. The last question I was going to say, as far as the shop and the expansion of it, I don't think it's any small feat at all. And I really appreciate the fact that you do the gun focused radio show each week, that nobody's paying you that I'm aware of to distribute that. So you're distributing it. And then you're also a guest on the other actual radio shows that go out full time being radio shows and getting support and stuff, and then using you to draw their audience. So the way that you're able to do all that, and then we wouldn't be talking if you're also while you're doing this focused on 2A, because I mean there are, I guess, I don't know if there actually is anybody doing a radio show that isn't 2A, because I think it's too much effort and it doesn't bring any money in. I can't imagine the radio show brings in like sale after sale. But anyway, can we talk about that? Because again, I think that's an interesting part, and I would imagine it's significant, a part of your time and cost for the shop.
Yeah, it's certainly been a whole lot more rewarding than I expected. And it was something that I didn't really think of myself ever doing. In fact, whenever we used to be guests on other radio shows, it was more of a marketing angle, and we would kind of slide in and talk to somebody like a local radio show or whatever. And I remember just getting so nervous, like to the point where I was almost like locking up and being like, oh man, this is, gonna kill me here. But we'd end up calming down and able to take some calls and whatnot. But so anyway, the long and the short of it is, when we were closed down from COVID, I just started doing some live streams, and that really grabbed, kind of grew some legs. And then we decided, once we got back open and we were like, hey, once a week, let's just do a radio show. And we found an hour of available airtime on a local channel, and we did it. We were able to get some sponsors to support it, and we're like, this is cool. This is working. I'm enjoying it. And then it opened up a whole nother world of opportunity with us from the Howie Carr Radio Network. We got to be, friendly with them. And all of a sudden I was getting asked to guest host.
Okay, so your Rapid Fire Radio started, and then they started asking you to guest host. It wasn't the other way around.
Right. Yeah. Like when we were really early on, if you go way back to season 1 in our archives, you'll see one show with Howie Carr as a guest. And so I had him on the show, and then his wife listened to it, and he listened to it, and they all liked what we were doing. And so they were like, wow, you can actually pull this off. And it's very hard to find people who can talk for an extended period of time. And, they've had a hard time finding people to kind of fill in for them. So they started to ask me to fill in, and I was blown away that they trusted me to do that. But it all stems off of one thing, and that is, when I was guests on their show, the phone lines lit up. They would, I think today on the Grace Curley show, we had just under 20 callers. So the phone lines just light up. People want to talk about guns. And so I was like, here's another need in our industry of, people who already kind of agree with the Second Amendment. They're not like opposed to it. They may or may not be gun owners, but they're willing to talk about it and support it. And there's a lot of confusion in states like our state, where the laws are so up in the air and muddy. So people would ask questions and whatnot. But anyway, it just kind of had this natural outflow. And now we're trying to figure out how to monetize it so that it's sustainable. The podcast side of things is easy. It doesn't cost a lot for us to podcast it, but airtime on the radio is extremely expensive. And we also don't, it's hit or miss. Like if the person's in the car at the house with the radio on, they're going to hear it, but it's not like they can, rewind it and play it unless they go to our website. So we feel like radio is a smaller audience. It helps us get the word out at first, but ultimately I think we're going to be back to just podcasting it at some point. And we haven't figured out when that is. But as of right now, it's just very expensive to continue to do radio, even though we love doing it. So I hope we could figure out a way to monetize it to the point where it'll pay for itself.
I really think as outreach, that would be awesome. So, I mean, off air or whatever, whenever I can give you my 2 cents on a couple of strategy ideas for that. But I really think that's all I wanted to focus on it, because it's not a given. I think it's obviously one of the reasons you don't see it happen at all very much. And there's a couple of people that fancy themselves radio people, and then they'll talk about guns. There's a couple of activists who will do radio, but I can't think of any gun shops that do more than just a guest spot on somebody else's produced shows. So it's a pretty significant thing, and it's happening not in the middle of what people would consider gun country.
Right.
So that's too. And it's neat that I appreciate you taking the time to explain it that way too. I don't know when we talked before, at least I didn't absorb it before, that you did the show first as an experiment, got discovered by the other hosts on the station, and then started to be a guest on their shows. They started to see the interest that gun topics bring up, and then you started to take over for them while they would go on vacation or whatever. And that's even more so an indication that your outreach and your Second Amendment activism and awareness has already accomplished so much, because those radio show hosts would have been content in their own world. If you guys would have never had something happened to his thing. This is internet censorship. I don't have a commercial for Toby. I'll have to get a commercial for Cape Gunworks. I don't know if you can hear me, Toby, but something happened. Maybe the camera went out. It says device is not connected. He did say he had an hour. But I can't think of any gun shop that do more than just a guest spot. So we'll wait here for a bit. I have a commercial, maybe. It's neat that I appreciate taking the time to explain it that way too. I don't know what we're talking about. So I don't know if Toby's hearing me or not. He's probably just trying to get to a different machine, maybe. But I can't bring him in without something connected. It says device is not connected. So we're in a weird state. I don't know, maybe am I disconnected? Give me some feedback if you're listening live. When you do stuff live, it's real and it's not scripted, and technical stuff happens. There we go. Nope, still says device not connected. So probably settings down below, looks like the little gear, and then flip it to one of the different cameras, maybe. I don't know how the camera would have gone off like mid-stream like that. That is odd. Unless maybe something in the computer disconnected a driver or something like that. Cancer, yeah, thank you, appreciate that. So they're trying to connect on that side. I don't think anything would have changed on my side. So what I guess I was in mid-sentence there, just I'm going to keep going ahead and giving Toby accolades, is that the right word, for those guys got the shop together and to a point where they could experiment with the radio show and then do that, spend the cash or get it, whatever needed to be accomplished to get, pay for the time on the show and experiment with it and then impress those hosts. Again, those hosts could have been, minding their business. Somebody could come on with a motorcycle show or some kind of a boat show, maybe. There we go. There we go.
Sorry about that. I think my dog ripped my camera lead right out of the computer and broke it. So
that's appropriate.
That's Arlo's fault. But
it's been an hour and 4 minutes, so that's no problem. Anyway, I don't know if I was just basically saying it's cool that I don't know if you appreciate or if anybody has said it, but you guys having the ability to get to where you could buy some airtime get to where you could impress those other hosts and help out with them, that created not just their awareness that guns are a big thing, which then, because Grace gives you 45 minutes each week for the 2A Tuesday.
Yeah.
That indicates to all those listeners and the people that program and the political strategists that watch her show because they want to use her as a finger on the pulse of the other side. They understand, and you could have gotten onto her show because now we know that there's that void. There was that void. People wanted gun information. You could have got on there and been the type to say, my rights, my rights, my rights, and that kind of thing. And it's, instead you've been very opposite of that. You've been very rational and articulate and efficient in answering people's questions. And then without any hesitation, taken on the extremely weird and extremely odd questions that, after my experience online, I have a zero tolerance policy. If you get a little bit too weird with me, I just ignore you, delete you, and move on. Where you've got no problem, challenging or, taking the challenge and offering a perspective that I respect. Like, I don't have that ability. I don't do it. So you just have different, life experience, time on the clock or whatever. And I respect that because you're able to do it well. But anyway, I wanted to say thanks for that. That radio show is no small portion, and hopefully you end up finding a way to be able to keep doing it. But even if you can't, what you've accomplished is unprecedented. It's totally priceless. So thanks for that.
Oh man, I'm glad there's people that are listening. And, I think even if the Rapid Fire Radio goes away on the radio, it's always going to be on the podcast. We're going to keep that rolling. And hopefully I'll still continue to be guests, on that's not tied to the Grace Curley show in any way. So I'll continue to do her thing as long as they ask me to. And I'll also continue to do the fill-ins for, I just got another date. I'm going to be filling in on September 19th, I think it is. So I'll be doing her show on Friday the 19th. I think it's the 2nd, excuse me, September 2nd. That's a Friday from noon to 3. I'll be filling in her show that day. So that'll be fun. And I enjoy doing it. It's a lot of fun. But getting back to what you were saying about taking the calls and stuff, is I actually wish sometimes somebody would call to disagree with me. And I think that could make some interesting radio, if they're anti-Second Amendment or, and they're reasonable. If they're just want to, be accusatory or, just say some talking points and hang up, that's whatever. But if it's somebody who's able to at least intelligently have a discussion and wants to argue with me about the merits or the points of it, I'm okay with that. And I actually wish to a certain extent that those people would call, but I don't even know if they exist on that show,
Well, on that show, but even in reality, there's people that, like you say, like to score points. So they'll come up and try to throw something up there just to throw some points. But very few people really want to have the conversation, at least in my experience over the years. There's lots of people I've known that have offered it in different ways, but typically they just want to say what they want to say and then walk off stage. They're not looking for conversation or interaction. And that, right, I think, says a lot about their motives as well, because they don't have faith in what they're talking about, or they don't, I don't know what I want to say, but they don't have, I think it goes to what they're trying to accomplish. They're not trying to keep a conversation going or come to a conclusion. They're just trying to offer a perception or a perspective, and that's it. Right. And because that changes based on what we're seeing and what happens, then we know that they are editing it, they are adapting it. But because they're not willing to come to the table, I think it says, again, a lot about their motives. But we have to speculate because they don't come to the table and offer it. But I hear what you're saying. And the other thing is that it's the audience, like you said, in that audience. Now, you could probably be on NPR and raise that question and have a lot of response. But then, it'd be interesting. I don't know. Right. We've been on for more than an hour now. I know you have things to do. Do you have a minute or two to go through some of the questions that have come up?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. And again, appreciate you sticking around in this kind of either the beginning of a series or, one of a few of these kind of shows. But I really like the idea of trying to get different gun shop owners on to chat about their stores.
Yeah.
So the first one is from Cancer Mouse. I'm a first generation immigrant. I can own a firearm, but I don't think I can get an FFL. Unless you know different, I'm pretty sure anybody can get an FFL. There's no qualification about your citizen. Well, you may have to be a citizen, but where you were born.
I don't even know if you have to be a citizen. It might get extended to permanent resident aliens.
Okay. And as an owner, you know more about all those levels. And I should know more. I live here near Arizona, but most of the people that came to Arizona were the same status or a couple of statuses. But in Massachusetts, you probably get a lot more European immigration and that kind of thing. So you probably are used to a lot more immigration statuses, or maybe even just students and stuff. Like, we only had a very few at the shops I hung out at.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's legal statuses in the United States. If you're legal to be do business here, then you can do business here. Guns aren't just like being a car dealer or pawn shop. There's some regulation, but it's not.
You do have to be a citizen. It says you have to be a U.S. citizen and 21 years or older.
As a FFL, did you go to some workbook that you got access to, or is it just from your experience, or just go to Google?
I just Googled it, and it came up in a FFL license requirements: be a U.S. citizen, be at least 21 years old, be legally allowed to possess firearms, have a location for conducting FFL activities. And it says home-based FFLs are the most popular. Ensure that your business activity at the location meets zoning requirements, not have violated the Gun Control Act, not lied on your FFL application. So that's kind of a bullet point list, but I didn't know that. I wasn't sure. So it appears that you do have to be a citizen. But
right on.
Thank you.
But
thank you,
actually, a question that's coming up from, I think, Cancer Mouse also, she asked if you could have a FFL, a mobile FFL, and that answers the question. You have to have a brick and mortar. And gun shows are so important because the only place an FFL can do business other than their brick and mortar is at a sanctioned gun show, or would be considered a gun show. That's why they're completely against gun shows since, well, I guess the 90s, really. They've been against gun shows for a long time.
Yeah, they have really demonized them and really taken them out to pasture and wanting to put a bullet in the back of the head of the gun shows, figuratively speaking. But it's kind of sad because, like you said before, it was a cool place to kind of have the meet and greet and the swap and kind of this really cool environment. So
it was the internet. It was the internet.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I remember going to gun shows when I was like 18 years old and a new gun owner, and they were definitely pretty popular back then. And we would drive like an hour and a half, 2 hours to go to these shows. And sometimes the bigger ones, there'd be a ton of people at them and a lot of different vendors. And I remember thinking, this guy wanted $1,800 for a HKSP 89 new in the box. And I was like, this guy's crazy. He wants $1,800 for this SP 89. And I could get it from Shotgun News for $15.99 or something like that, And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm kicking myself for all the times I turned down a gun that I thought was a bad deal. In hindsight, is like, would be an amazing deal these days. But whatever, live and learn.
Again, a conversation about gun shows would be another awesome conversation. So Toby saying, or DJ is asking, Toby, what pieces of tech, like the point of sale systems, inventory tools, maybe something for your books, used in your retail operation are the ones that you would not want to do without as a gun shop in 2022? This
is a loaded question because we are on our third POS, and we have nicknamed POS for fill in the blank. Yeah.
And that's, they all say they're going to do it all, and none of them do anything similar. It's like tax software or anything else, right? It's maybe work for you.
Yeah. And when we were we went to the Action Target Range Development Seminar when we were first getting the idea to do this. And I don't know if you know Doug Vandervoot or not, but he used to own his own gun store with a range. And then he was a consultant in the industry. And then he worked for AccuSport as the range liaison guy. So he knew how to what filters to order to get you the Tyvek suits, the filters for your respirators, all this stuff. So I'll try to be quick here and answer quick. But anyway, he stood up and said, the POS, one thing is universal, they all suck. And he goes, so the one you have is probably the best one out there because you already know how to use it. And we didn't really listen to that advice. And now we're on our third one. So the one piece of tech that you absolutely have to have in this space is an electronic bound book, as far as I'm concerned. So and it's even better when it communicates with your POS. So we have that going for us, but it's kind of wonky. But even still, the electronic bound book is something you can't do without, especially now in the age of the Biden administration's zero tolerance policy for FFLs. Because if you make, errors, you can have your FFL revoked now, even if they're not like significant errors, if they're, grammar errors or just omissions of certain things. So
illegal activities or criminal inawareness or something, like not being aware of stuff walking out the back door or intentionally letting people. There's nothing like that. This is like you've mentioned one, MASS instead of MA, I guess, would be a forgery or something.
It's more in your town. Like if you were to write LA instead of Los Angeles.
Right.
That's one of those clerical errors that could get you referred to for revocation hearing under the new zero tolerance policy. Because it's real easy to package that up and say, this is a rogue gun dealer. They are willfully breaking the law. So like after our last FFL inspection, they list out the ones that, they found infractions on, and they said, sign this paper. And by signing this, and by the way, you have to sign this or else you're not going to be able to continue. By signing this, you are acknowledging that if you ever make one of these mistakes again, you are willfully violating the law. And I'm like, that's bull crap. I didn't willfully do this in the first place. I'm not going to willfully do it if it ever happens again. But if somehow this clerical error slips through the cracks and you guys pick up on it, now all of a sudden it's going to get ratcheted up to the next level of, kind of punishment, if you will. So they call rogue gun dealers now who are willfully violating the law because they have some sort of clerical error that they've already been warned about. So that's what the new zero tolerance task force looks like as far as the administration that we're living under. That's why revocation hearings are up 500%.
And that's a way to, because you're saying, it's almost necessary to have the electronics in order to keep track of that stuff at the level that level of scrutiny that they're gonna require now out of nowhere. That's effectively takes people who do things with pencil and paper and just aren't capable of doing it this way, takes them off the playing field. And
right.
They don't even have to have this be permanent. If it takes a bunch of people off the playing field, it takes them off the playing field.
Yep.
So that's another reason why I think it's a great idea to get, efforting to try to get away for gun shops to be able to communicate with each other. That's not necessarily, it's more, let's work together instead of let's exist together. But I appreciate that. Next one was from Cape Cod. I keep saying Garage, who joins in on your live chats quite often. Thanks for showing up on ours. Asks, I believe the range and training at Cape Gunworks made things easier as a first-time gun owner to transition from beginning to informed and confident in my own ability. So awesome sentiments. Thank you for that. It's not really a question, but I wanted to make sure Tony saw that one, or Toby saw that one. I'm gonna keep saying that. Sorry. Green Mountain Armory. I don't know if you know that person. Toby is the man. All Massachusetts.
I've trained with him, and we are good old buddies. Go way back to some of the classes we did together in Worcester Rifle and Pistol Club, and I sold him some of our precision rifle barrels. And he says a little further down in the chat that my primary use guns have barrels from Cape Gunworks. And so he sends me pictures every once in a while of the target groupings at whatever distance he's shooting. And he's, great trainer in his own right, and instructor. And so, he's a good dude. And I've spoke with him over the years about consulting with him about opening a gun store up in Vermont and everything else. So yeah, it's good to hear from you, brother Wes.
Right on.
Sorry.
I just put a link of his channel and threw a link out there. 373 subscribers now. So if anybody wants to jump over,
Cool.
Good endorsement from Toby. So then I had a question. And I don't know if this one's going to be too long at the end of a long show like this. We're already running over again. I appreciate your time here. What's your opinion of NSSF, specifically with their role in the industry with gun shops? Because they cover a lot, but we want to talk about that. I'm going to hopefully have you back because there was so much talk about just about Cape Gun Works. I'd like to have you on sometime in the future just to talk about gun shops. But if you want to save this, I can.
Yeah, they've been very helpful for us. Like at some point, as a partner, when we were just fledgling, putting pen to paper, they offer services that nobody else does, like a demographic market study of your area, like by zip code. They'll come in and do a demographic market study. And then we became kind of like a partner range of the NSSF. And then they came alongside and did the First Shots program, where they would ship us ammo and targets and Ioneer Pro and say, charge whatever you want. You can keep all this stuff, but give it to the people so that, you can get new people shooting on the range. So we'd charge a nominal like $20 fee or whatever and get people out there for first shots and stuff like that. So they're doing a great job with all of that type of support for the gun shops. I've heard some negative stuff out there recently, and I don't have my finger on the pulse to really weigh in on that. They've certainly done, I think, the industry an amazing service with SHOT Show over the years. What that continues to look like in the future, I don't know. They also got us somebody who basically was like a liaison to us and the ATF. So they would come in once a year and look at our books and basically tell us what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, and if we're doing anything wrong and how to fix it. And they want us to stay in business. So they're like really trying to help people come up with best practices and whatnot. And so I think their industry their role in the industry as far as gun shops are concerned is very important. And I probably don't tap the vast amount of resources that are at my disposal with them as much as I should. I paid early on for tons of information, that demographic market study, but then they have stuff on marketing, they have stuff on website design and selling online, and they have stuff on compliance and training classes. And it's just an unbelievable vast library of information that they have compiled from people in the industry and offer it to the gun shop owner at a very reasonable price and package it up, and they continually make it better. So I'm a fan of the NSSF right now. I do think that we really need a group that is going to be the go-between for gun shops, manufacturers, and be the liaison to the world for us, if you will, or at least to maybe as a lobbyist or a type of a voice out there that can speak collectively for a group.
You mean like PR for the industry or for the community?
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. Yep.
Yeah.
And
they do that. They've been instrumental. There's a really good PDF that talks about their history, and I'm back and forth with them. I like them a lot, and every once in a while they piss me off. But I'm pretty sure they brought Orange, Hunter Safety Orange, as an initiative to say, hey, we're going to get a little, we're getting too much backlash. Let's do something proactive as gun community, as hunters.
Right.
Back in the day, that was back in when we were young.
Yeah.
Even before.
Yeah. So hopefully that
Okay, I appreciate the answer. And like I said, there's probably a lot to that one. And because NSSF is such a big thing and SHOT Show alone is a big one.
Mhm.
Mouse had asked about having a gun shop mobile, but what about a gunsmith? You could probably do something where you picked up stuff to come back to your gunsmith. I don't know if you get into things that you can do and what you should do, because what you're gonna like get, just really uh, be seen as doing like a political push versus being just a helpful, service to the customer.
Yeah, I think there's no difference if we're picking it up and bringing it back as if someone was shipping it via common carrier to us. So I would assume that, I don't know if there'd be any complication to us doing it, but it certainly seems like it would be a good service. If somebody calls and says, "Hey, can you pick up my gun on Tuesday? I need you to do something to it," and we pick it up, bring it back, fix it, and deliver it back out to them.
Cleaning and like, I'm going to be on vacation. Can you come discreetly pick it up and then, when I'm back, drop them off? And that would be kind of a cool service. But I know it's easy to say, but it gets really complicated because you got to put it into a book and all the rest.
Yeah.
But I've done that before when traveling. Have a gun shop clean something for me, and then it's in their books as gunsmithing, and then come back a couple of days later when I was out of New York, so that I could travel without having to worry about having the guns that I normally travel with.
Yeah. Cool.
Again, I appreciate your time. We're way over what we said we were going to be, and I appreciate the people listening live. If I missed any of the questions here, if you've got questions for Toby, I'm going to recommend listening on Wednesdays when they record the Rapid Fire Radio show. Maybe listen to Grace Curley on Tuesdays when the 2A Tuesday segment is on, and call in and ask Toby a question or whatever. And let me give Tony as much, or sorry, I am a dyslexic, so I'm going to keep saying that until I finally quit saying it. But I apologize up front for that. But I'm going to give you as much time as you'd like, and then we'll just end it. So again, I appreciate you coming on, either the first of a series or one of the fits and starts to an eventual series here to chat with gun shop owners about gun shops in the United States in 2022.
Yeah, thank you, man. Hopefully it's not a one and done, and maybe it'll be the start to something awesome. And I think it makes a lot of sense on my end to sit here and talk about my own store, and I don't know why anyone else would be resistant to that. So hopefully it'll be something really cool. The makings is something cool, and I'm happy to come on talk anytime with you. So you just let me know when and where, and we'll do it. And but yeah, I appreciate you having me. And if you want to listen to us on rapidfireradio.us or capegunworks.com, we'll be recording tomorrow live, and we try to get a little bit interactive. Last week show was a little bit more informative on the first hour, and we got a little more interactive on the second hour. But I always try to take some questions in the first hour if possible. And I appreciate everybody hanging in there and wanting to talk guns. It's what we do, and it's a lot of fun when you guys get involved and start talking back. So I appreciate it. And thanks again for having me, G-Webs, and let me know anytime you need me.
Right on. And yeah, I appreciate the summary there. I'm trying to find it, rapidfireradio.us.
Yep.
And then
or capegunworks.com. Either one will get you there.
Right. It zaps you over to Cape Gunworks capegunworks.com/rapidfire for anybody that's listening to this. And again, that was great conclusion to it. And we are here not because we're searching for subscribers or big numbers. We appreciate the people that do show up. We know that there's a lot of people that get stuff done, and those people are looking for good, authentic info. And that's what we're happy to be able to provide. So thanks for the ability to do that. And let's see, what's today? As we're recording this, it's Tuesday. So have a great week. Lots of good stuff. I'll quit talking now because I don't have an ending to this. I'll just have to click the